Hi, I'm Ashley Cooley, a birth, baby, and sleep specialist and mom of 3. There's so much information out there, right? This show is dedicated to helping you clear out the noise so you can figure out what will work best for your baby and your family. If you're looking to learn more about your baby, gain more confidence in your parenting, and get as much sleep as you can through it all, you've come to the right place. Bringing Up Baby is about to get a little easier. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bringing Up Baby podcast. My name is Ashley Cooley. I'm the owner of Birth, Baby, Sleep and host of this show. And consider this our welcome back party. We are back with regular weekly episodes every Tuesday, wherever you grab your podcasts. And we're really excited to bring you not only so many great new episodes, but also I want to introduce you to our new community. So in the past, we've had different names for these groups that we've had, and in an effort to streamline everything and make it just as easy to understand as possible and as easy as possible for you guys to get extra support and information. Now we have not only the Bringing Up Baby podcast, but we have the Bringing Up Baby community, which is a free group, a free space where we can continue these conversations from the podcast. It's where you'll also find out about different virtual and in-person events that we're doing, and also where our huge list of local and virtual resources is housed. So to stay connected, to learn more, to continue the learning and sharing and discussions about the podcast, would love for you guys to check out our Bringing Up Baby community. Again, it's free. You can check out birthbabysleep.ca to grab more information and to sign up and to join us. But that is there for you. We also have our, what used to be called our Bringing Up Baby community membership is now our Bringing Up Baby VIP membership. So not only can you grab more information, continue the discussion, get some support and information for free in our Bringing Up Baby community, but you could also consider joining our Bringing Up Baby VIP membership, which is a monthly subscription, super cost effective, especially considering all the information, guidance, support that you're going to get, particularly around your little one's sleep. But we do have other conversations in there as well. For instance, we invite other experts, lactation consultants, pediatric dietitians, physiotherapists and the like, and they offer some of their expertise in the group as well. But it's kind of where we continue and have a lot of discussions around sleep for different ages and get that, individualized support in a group way. So both of those are available. You can check out birthbabysleep.ca. That's again where we can continue the conversations or maybe dive a little deeper into what we're talking about here on the Bringing Up Baby podcast. So now, without further ado, let's get into today's topic. It's a big one. We're talking about overnight feedings, not just about, how to decrease overnight feedings or even just talking about why your baby's waking up for overnight feedings. We're going to talk about what's common, what's normal to expect for healthy babies that are growing well. Of course, if there are any concerns or medical things going on with your little one, that those may need to trump some of what we're going to talk about here today. I never want to, nor will I ever go against medical advice. But in terms of most of us, when we're looking at, hey, when and how can we start to get a little bit more consolidated, longer stretches of sleep overnight, both for baby and yourself? That's what we're going to talk about here today and how to do it. So here's some common scenarios that parents can find themselves in when it comes to these overnight feedings. A lot of times we have a baby that is maybe waking frequently overnight, and parents are finding that, only offering milk, whether that's in a bottle or breastfeeding or what have you, is the only way that they'll go back to sleep, like every time, 99.9% of the time. If we feed them, they'll go back to sleep. When I try other things, it doesn't seem to work, or it maybe just works temporarily. They'll sleep for 20 minutes. They'll just be up again. So you're finding that you're offering milk quite frequently overnight. We're going to talk about what frequently even means, because that does mean different things depending on the age of your baby. But you're either kind of feeding to sleep or to help your baby go back to sleep very frequently overnight. But you may also be finding that you're worried about their intake, and therefore you actually you feel like you need to feed them overnight because maybe they're really distracted during feedings during the day. Super, super common, especially when they're in that, 5-month-ish age range is when that can sometimes start. So your baby gets a bit of FOMO and they won't stay latched or won't drink all of that bottle before they just come off and are just too busy. They've got so many other things going on, right? So then we feel at night when they are waking, and that's probably when they'll get a nice solid feed because it's quiet and it's dark and there's nothing else distracting them. So then we get caught in this cycle of feeding overnight, and then they might need that, right? Other times it's when babies are maybe a little bit older. Let's say they're 8, 9, 10 months old and they're not taking in solids like they maybe should be, quote unquote, for their age. And so again, that leaves you worried and concerned. Well, that must be why they're waking up overnight. They need to eat. They're hungry. They didn't get much today. So I got to feed them. And I am so sure that you have tried to feed them more frequently during the day or to give them more fuller feeds. And you're trying to avoid those distractions, and you're at a get together with friends and their babies, but your baby needs to eat. So you go into a dark, quiet room all by yourself to try to minimize those distractions. But it's still super frustrating because your baby has a lot of development going on and they may still be distracted. So all this to say, if you find yourself in any of these scenarios, and we're thinking, hey, how on earth am I ever going to try to reduce these night feedings, let alone eliminate them if your baby's of a particular age? Again, we'll get into that very soon. It can seem so daunting. It can seem so impossible to ever get this to change around. Because as you know, we cannot force feed them. We cannot make them eat when we want them to eat. And we can't make them take in more than what they actually need. So we need more options, right? Now, I'm going to start, before we get into kind of like the how-tos and stuff, I need to start, as I always do, by saying that there are no have-tos or shoulds here, okay? These are options. It's information that I'd love for you to consider, but ultimately, I want you to do what works for you. Don't let other people tell you that just because your baby's of a certain age, or they're not sleeping through the night yet, or they're not blah, 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 that you need to do you're supposed to do X, Y, Z. Oh, you should do this to get your baby to do this. This kind of stuff needs to stop. These conversations need to stop. It's really tough because people just want to help, right? If someone's asking, let's just say, hey, how is baby sleeping? Let's say they're 11 months old. Oh, we're still like getting up a couple times a night. They're feeding. Somebody somewhere is going to have an opinion to say that, oh, that shouldn't be happening. You should be doing this. You should have done this when they were younger. La, 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 la. This just makes us feel shitty as parents. It makes us feel like, gosh, what am I doing? How do I know what the right thing is? Or it seems like everybody else knows what they're doing or has an idea. Listen, there's a lot of information out there. And there's a lot of information out there for a reason. It's because different things work for different people. And I think a lot of us just want to help. We want to offer support. We want to offer suggestions because maybe you didn't think of this. Maybe you didn't think of that. But ultimately, I'm going to wrap this up because this is not a conversation on how to talk to other people about your baby. But just to say that anything that I'm covering here right now, these aren't things that you have to do. These aren't things that you should do. They are options, it's information, and I'd like for you to take it and consider it. And then if you'd still like to chat more about it, if there's still something where you're like, this sounds really great and I got this information, but there's something in our particular situation or set of circumstances that might make something like that challenging. So how can we work around that? That's the beauty of working in private consulting, where we can specifically tailor these suggestions and things for you and your baby. So if you need more of that support, I got you covered. You can always check out birthbabysleep.ca or give me a shout out at birthbabysleep on Instagram, send me a message, and happy to chat more about that. But for most people, I think this episode's going to give you all that you need to know about overnight feeds to hopefully make you feel better about where you're at, about where you want to be, about where you're going, and some practical strategies to help you get there. All right, so before 4 months of age, we're not trying to restrict overnight feedings, pretty much ever. I mean, of course, there's always extenuating circumstances. Some say maybe a 3.5-month-old might be really starting to wake up more so than they used to because of the development that's gone on. But on average, we want those babies that are under 3 to 4 months of age to get all the feedings they need. And a lot of times they are overnight. There is a growth spurt at 3 months of age. So I always like to make sure that we're not trying to decrease feedings during those kinds of times, or really just optimize on the feedings during the day, so we can do both. But these conversations, we're going to kind of really focus on those babies that are over 4 months of age, because not only are they developmentally capable of figuring out some sleep stuff with their own functioning circadian rhythm, and their sleep patterns and all those things have changed, but we also want to consider that feeding overnight is still 110% normal to do for the bulk of their first year of life. And yes, some babies will wake up to continue feeding after that 1 year mark. Do they have to? I'm not sure. Depends on the baby. Probably not for most. But is it still normal that they do? Absolutely, 110% yes. So again, this is not to make you do anything in a particular way. This does not mean if your baby is, say, 13, 14 plus months and they're still waking up to be fed, it's not a problem. You know what? It's not a problem for me if it's not a problem for you. But it is absolutely possible to get some longer overnight stretches, only to get up once or twice, maybe, to feed, let's say for 15 minutes, give or take, and then back down to sleep. That feels so much more doable to so many families than it does to wake every 30 to 60 to 90 minutes throughout the night to feed your baby, not getting any solid stretches yourself, and doing that over time, night after night after night after night. We know that can play a role. So, at what ages are babies still waking up for overnight feeds? It's normal for babies to wake up overnight to eat, no matter what their age. It's normal. It's fine. You can do it. Many will drop feedings on their own. Okay. So as they're able to take in more nutrition during the day, maybe they're eating solids now. It depends how old they are, but a lot of overnight feedings can be dropped on their own. Again, that happens. But a lot of times the families that I'm working with and talking to, they're waking up very often, and we're just looking to reduce that. Okay. So under 4 months of age, I'm going to say don't limit, just feed them. Between 4 to 6 months of age, you have the option to minimize those feeds up to 2 overnight feedings. From 6 to 8 months, it could be maybe up to 1 overnight feeding. And in my opinion, I think by 9 months over and beyond, if they're still waking up for feedings and they're healthy and growing well and there's no concerns medically, you can absolutely nudge them in that direction to drop all of those overnight feeds if you haven't already, because it would be fine to do otherwise if they were over 4 months of age. But to me, if they've gotten to that 8 to 9 month mark and they're taking in some solids, and just because of their development, like, they are 1,000% capable of sleeping through the night and getting what they need calorie-wise, nutrition-wise during the day. So that's just kind of where I like to come from with the feedings. I try to look at reducing instead of completely eliminating, unless that's what the parents are looking for. Obviously, maybe you've only been feeding once a night and you're looking to drop to 0. Like, that's very doable as well. So I'm not trying to can you tell I'm just being really careful about making sure I'm not putting the pressure on, because we don't have to fit into a box. I just want you to know what's possible. If you're looking at starting solids with your baby soon, I highly recommend checking out My Little Eater's baby-led feeding program. With their signature texture timeline, which isn't available anywhere else, they teach you about progressing from easy to advanced textures at a pace that works for you. Plus, their online course covers everything you'd want to know about feeding your baby from 6 to 12 months, from how to prepare and the supplies that you need, to what foods to serve, what to avoid, choking hazards, managing gagging and choking, balancing plates, introducing allergens, and so much more. The best bang for your buck is definitely the baby-led feeding program and 60-day meal plan bundle, which gives you day-by-day perfectly balanced meals to offer your baby, all developed by their team of local dietitians. And for Bringing Up Baby podcast listeners only, check the link in our show notes and use code BIRTHBABY for 20% off their products. So how are we going to decrease these overnight feedings? Let's just get right down to it. First, I want you to consider their sleep environment. Is it dark? Is it cool? Is it safe? Is it comfortable? Are they in the bedroom with you, or are they in their own space? Sometimes there often comes a point for lots of babies that as they get older and they're still in the same room with you, and maybe that's out of necessity, maybe it's just because you want to, maybe it's for safety, whatever the reason is. Sometimes babies, when they're sleeping in the same room as us, they notice that we're nearby. Sometimes they're waking more frequently overnight because they're in the room with us or because they're in the bed with us. I'm not saying that's good or bad. It can be great, actually. We have classes on safe co-sleeping, not against it whatsoever, but for your information, sometimes that is why they're waking so frequently. And so I know so many families, and I've been here myself, where we've done some co-sleeping or continued room sharing for quite some time because it's just easier for me as the breastfeeding parent to get up and feed and go back to sleep much more efficiently than if I had to physically get up out of bed, walk over to the baby's room in their crib, get them, pick them up, feed them, go back down. It would really disrupt my sleep more in that scenario. So I would want them, if I'm going to wake up this much, I want them with me. But sometimes they're waking up that much because they're with you, because they're nearby. So I just want you to know that could be something to consider, is depending on their age and stage and where you're at and how you're feeling about them potentially being in their own space, that might be a good option. Other thing we want to check on, not just their sleep environment or where they're sleeping, but watch their wake windows during the day. We have other podcast episodes on wake windows, and there's lots of information in our community as well. But when it comes to wake windows, you want to make sure they're appropriate for your little one, because if they're overtired going to bed, that causes more frequent wake ups. So if we can eliminate those as potential reasons to wake up, how do we actually, now they're waking up, we want to minimize this? One option, and perhaps most of you have already tried this, offer something else to soothe them instead. A soother, a finger, some other soothing technique like bouncing, rocking, shushing, holding, those kinds of things that are not anything that's not actually feeding to help them to go back to sleep. Now, this can be tough on a couple of fronts. One, if you use feeding, whether breastfeeding or bottle feeding, to help your baby go to sleep initially at bedtime, they're probably only going to look for that in the middle of the night too, and not much else will work. Or maybe you do get some wake ups, you can kind of rock them back to sleep or just pop that soother in, but then they just wake up 20 minutes later again until they finally get fed. And then maybe they're more likely to sleep a longer stretch after that, but that long stretch is not long enough. So don't mean to laugh, guys. I know this is painful when you're going through it, but just laughing because so many of us go through it or have gone through it. So short of trying something else to get them to go back to sleep, if that hasn't worked for you, and maybe you're kind of just trying to gauge the timing of those feedings too. So for a baby who's over 4 months of age, I would try to go at least a 5 or 6 hour stretch before feeding them again. Help them get through the first chunk, that first half-ish of their night sleep. Because when we can do that, we know for babies over 4 months of age that, number one, they're typically capable of doing that overnight, waiting at least that long to be fed again. But two, it's about preserving their sleep. It's in the first half of the night that babies or humans were able to get into a deep sleep and stay in that deep sleep for the longest chunk of time before we kind of get into a lighter state of sleep, maybe wake up. And that's called a sleep cycle. We go through several of these in the night, and your baby does too. And over 4 months, their sleep is much more like ours in that way. but it's that first sleep cycle that is the longest and the one that we want to try to encourage to be the longer one. And if you can try to avoid feeding before, let's just say midnight, give or take. So any wake-ups that happen before midnight, you're using some other technique to try to get them to go back to sleep. That prolongs that first feeding, and then you're more likely to have longer stretches in the second half of the night because of that. So that could be one option there. Another option that families try or go with, whether breastfeeding or bottle feeding, is trying to decrease the amount of milk in their bottle slowly over time, or shortening the breastfeeding session by, say, a minute or two every few days to decrease how much they take in overnight. This can work. I've seen and heard this work for many families, but I've also seen and heard it not work for many families. So it really depends. I think it can depend on the temperament of your baby, how much patience or gas you have in your tank, those kinds of things. But this is going to be a process. And the idea is, hey, if we can get them to take in a little bit less overnight, but still kind of meet that need, maybe they'll take in that much more during the day. And then we can start rebalancing where these feedings are happening. So that might be an option for you as well. Short of doing that, you could always send somebody else in the room who doesn't usually offer the feedings to help out. So for instance, if you're a breastfeeding mother and you typically are going in to feed, or you're feeding your baby, breastfeeding your baby throughout the night, can your partner or a support person or family member, somebody with useless nipples, I like to say, can they go in and offer some comfort for your baby and outside of feeding? Not to say that you can't do it yourself if you are the feeding parent, but the message is very clear when somebody else goes in that, oh, I'm not going to be like, for myself, I was a breastfeeding mother. So if ever my partner went in, my husband, to go comfort one of our girls, they would know immediately that, oh, I'm not getting fed. It's not mom that's here, it's dad. So I'm not going to be fed. So sometimes they'd actually maybe get upset about that. No, that's not who I want. Or the other parent or the support person can find it's a bit more of a struggle to get them to go back to sleep. But stay persistent, stay calm, be comforting. They will eventually go back to sleep. And you can by being consistent with that and only having the feeding parent go in during times for feedings can help to eliminate that. And lastly, I'm going to say that sleep training can help bridge this gap too. Sleep training, by the way, I know when we hear that term, I think most of us go to cried out. Most of us go to there's going to be lots of crying but sleep training in and of itself is helping your baby learn that they can fall asleep on their own. And there's various ways of doing that. And some are more efficient than others, and some work better for some babies and families than others. But there's various ways of doing that. But helping your baby learn that they can fall asleep at the onset of sleep, so at bedtime, for instance, on their own, then they're way, way more equipped to get back to sleep on their own in the middle of the night if they're not truly hungry. So if they're just waking up because they're coming out of a sleep cycle, a lot of times babies like to be fed, sure, to get some calories and nutrients and to get some bonding. Like there's so many reasons to feed babies, but it's also sometimes to help them go back to sleep because that's what they're used to needing and that's what they think they need to go back to sleep. But if you show them another way to go back to sleep, then they're going to be more likely to remember that and do that in the middle of the night unless they're hungry or they're sick or they're stuck in the crib rails and need your help. Like there's going to be a legit reason that they need to wake up. Now, I think probably the most common question I hear around all of this is, how do I know that my baby's not hungry when they wake up? When I look at decreasing those feedings, how do I know which wake up I should be not feeding for and which one should I be feeding for? And I kind of like to frame it a little bit like this. It's not 100% the same, but it'll give you a better picture, I think. If I were to wake up every 2 hours overnight, let's say, and every time I woke up every 2 hours for months on end, somebody gave me a slice of pizza and I was hungry and I ate it. And every 2 hours I get a slice of pizza. So the first time you don't give me that slice of pizza at 10 o'clock, I'm probably going to be upset. I'm probably going to feel hungry. It's going to be different and maybe tougher for me to go back to sleep because I'm not getting what I'm used to and so used to getting. Just because it's tough doesn't mean it's bad or wrong or impossible though, right? So eventually I do get back to sleep. I wake up a little bit later. Okay, now I'm really hungry. But maybe because of my age and all these other circumstances that, I can eat. So that's why I mentioned before, for babies over 4 months of age, try to hold off not feeding their first feeding. If you're doing a lot of feedings and we're reducing, try to hold off until at least midnight before offering the feeding. So whatever that first wake up is after midnight, you don't wake them up. But it could be 12:01. It could, maybe it's not till 1:30 or 2 o'clock, but they wake up, you look at the clock, you see it's after 12 o'clock, you go and feed them and put them right back down. And then the second feeding, if your baby's between say 4 to 6 months and you're reducing feedings to up to twice a night, after that first one, until the next one, give at least about 3 hours. And they'll usually have a good sleep in between that. So that way you're kind of nudging them in this direction of getting a longer first stretch in the night, then getting a feeding or two, or maybe not, depending on their age. You're minimizing those feedings to get to morning. That is very capable and possible for most babies. So let's summarize this, guys. First, don't let anybody tell you that your baby should only be waking X amount of times or not at all because of their age or whatever. You do what works for you and your baby, full stop. Second, healthy babies who don't have any weight or growth concerns, no medical conditions where your doctor is saying that they still need to continue to wake so often to feed overnight, you're usually able to decrease their feedings to a maximum of 2 times overnight after 4 months of age, and honestly completely eliminate all night feedings by say 9 to 10 months, if not before. Okay, you're allowed to nudge them in that direction whenever it feels right for you and your family, as long as they're after 4 months of age. And so they're capable of doing that. But if they are still feeding overnight by 9 to 10 months or over, again, not a bad thing. And lastly, if you've been trying different strategies to help your little one decrease or eliminate night feedings and there's still a struggle there, I'd love to chat. Personalized sleep consulting packages are available. We have our VIP membership for continued learning and guidance with sleep. And really, I don't want anybody struggling out there for a long time trying to get this when it should hopefully come together more efficiently. So if you're struggling, if you're trying, and even this podcast episode wasn't helpful, there's probably still more that we can talk about and maybe really tweak this to make it work for you and your little one. So please feel free to reach out and we can chat about that. Have a great day, guys. We'll see you back here next time. If you're looking for more information or support along your parenting journey, check out birthbabysleep.ca. That's where you're going to find prenatal classes, postpartum and new baby resources, and sleep support during the childhood years. Lastly, but certainly not least, if you got something out of this episode or our show in general, leaving a rating or a quick review goes a really long way to helping others find us. So please consider leaving one. That's all for now. I'm Ashley Cooley, and we'll see you back here next time.